Santana, and I'm going to be talking about my story with being a child of incarcerated parents. From the time I could remember, I admired my dad. He was the one I looked up to, and I would follow him around wherever I could. I wanted to grow up to be just like him, but not all the parts about him. It was hard for me when he was taken to jail. Whenever that happened, I would step up to be the man of the house. I would protect my sister and mom. I would be the first one to go into our house to make sure no one was in there. I put myself in danger before anyone could. But there was always a difference between when my mom and my dad went to jail. Even though I looked up to my dad, I still got the feeling when my mom was taken from me. I always felt the feeling of abandonment when I saw them get put in the backseat of a cop car. I set up boundaries for myself throughout my life, from not being able to let people in because I always thought they were either going to get taken or abandoned from me. I also got very aggressive and bottled up my emotions. Now, I would like to talk about the intergenerational part that comes in with this. I have seen many of my old friends follow in the footsteps of their parents with getting put in the system, dropping out of school, and starting drugs. And that is a big part people shy away from when things like this get brought up. Like I said before, I always wanted to be like my dad, just the way he was, until I was old enough to realize that that cycle needs to break. I had 2 brothers go to prison because of drugs and other things. It's hard to break a cycle that has gone on for a while. The thing you have to go through and be told and work through, growing up with seeing those things and living with them, you grow up with the mentality that you will be just like them. There is no breaking away from that. Even when you get put into foster care, you still have that mentality and you're surrounded by people you don't know. I have seen this happen with multiple kids that I grew up with. They couldn't break the cycle. Within the last 5 years, I hated the words, "You're just like your mom or dad." I didn't want to be anything like them. I didn't want to grow up to go to prison like some of my family. I wanted to change that. And there are situations where parents being taken is good, like in my situation, because it put me in a place where I was able to stray away from those intergenerational parts. I was able to get put into a family that was willing to help me find and make a better way of myself. What people don't realize is how easy it is to slip back into those things because of how normal they were to you at such a young age. And issues like this can't be fixed or helped without getting messages like this out there.
Kids with incarcerated parents are more likely to be placed in special education, be held back in school, receive poor grades, more likely to be diagnosed with depression, and even be charged for a federal offense themselves. Multiple studies have been able to conclude this when they compare children and adolescents of incarcerated parents. More than 33% of people currently in American prisons have or have had a parent in prison. Not having a parent with you, especially because they're incarcerated, can have drastically negative effects on both parties. For the kid, it changes how they grow up, which changes how they see the world, their perception, and social life. They can have lots of emotional and behavioral issues. After taking hair samples, one study found that stress hormones, such as cortisol and cortisone levels, have been increased. The underlying root problem here is that there is a lack of attachment and connection between the child and the parent. Between ages 1 and 5, more than 1 million synaptic connections are formed every second, and 85% of the physical brain is built. Those connections that are being made don't connect the same way, which creates strain between that child and the world because of their brain development. Robert K. Merton, a famous sociologist who studied why people commit crimes, came up with what we call the strain theory. He states that there are 5 stages or levels of reactions to strain. These reactions change and shift what we do to achieve our goals and how we choose to function in society. Strain in this case meaning disconnection from the world and having a different perception of how things roll. Not saying that multiple perspectives are bad, just that some can be bad when they're harming that person. The 4th reaction to strain is what Merton calls retreatism, where people reject their goals and the means to achieve them and retreat from mainstream society. Many children of incarcerated parents experience this. Not that it's their fault, but when experiencing the reactions of strain over time, it can have progressively worse consequences forever.
A kid suffers from having an incarcerated parent, but will the child suffer more if they have an incarcerated mother than an incarcerated father or vice versa? After lots of research, I came to the conclusion that there is no difference in the neurological effects a child faces by having an incarcerated mother instead of an incarcerated father or vice versa.
Well, as I was talking about like the father-daughter relationship, I was curious if there was a distinct difference between the effects of a child that has with an incarcerated mother than an incarcerated father. Corey's research showed that there isn't much of a difference and that the child faces the same consequences regardless of the parent incarcerated.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
I would agree with that. Because again, you've got those 2 people you count on, right? And if one of them's gone, that really matters. It really matters. I think it's why we have 2 parents. right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so that if one person dies or something happens, you think about when people were created, pretty likely that one parent could die young, right? Even a mom in childbirth. So being able to have one person that you still have is really important. So it probably doesn't matter which one it is, it's just that one has gone.
A child needs both their mother and father, so if one is incarcerated, the child will suffer the same negative consequences. A child bonds with both of their parents, and they need both of their parents, not just one of them. If a child is missing one of their parents, they will have higher chances of struggling as a child and throughout their lifetime. Children with an incarcerated parent can find it very difficult to deal with their emotions and can face emotional challenges such as anxiety and have higher chances to deal with things like depression and mental illnesses. They often feel feelings of abandonment, and that is what can contribute to them feeling certain negative ways. From an article called A Father's Impact on Child Development, they state that many would admit that they have struggled with feelings of abandonment and low self-esteem due to the lack of father's love in their lives. From another article called Exploring Your Mind about absent mothers, they state that it is a dangerous situation for children, so to survive it, sometimes they put on masks, kind and obedient, or the neighborhood bully, insensitive, etc. Once they're adults, it's hard for them to tell what's hiding behind the fake personality they created to deal with the abandonment. In order to cope with the trauma of having an incarcerated parent and to defend themselves, children create fake personalities and they feel negative emotions that will affect them when it comes to school, forming relationships, and life in general. Some people might claim that this doesn't occur, but the truth is that children with incarcerated parents struggle, but each child struggles differently because no child is the same. Children with incarcerated parents also have a harder time building relationships with people and trusting people. Being able to build relationships is a very important life skill, and trust plays a big part in it. From Exploring Your Mind, they share that they may be skeptical of their relationships or ask impossible things of them. So when an absent mother leaves in her wake is a person who's learned nothing but how to build relationships full of anger, anxiety, and above all, mistrust. Another point from that same source is what children really lose when they have an absent mother is their trust in other people. A child needs both of their parents, and having one of their parents incarcerated affects the child negatively. The child will face the same negative consequences no matter which parent is incarcerated, the mother or the father.
The incarceration system creates a physical and emotional barrier within the relationship of the parent and child. With the physical bars of the prison, the child is kept away by the parent and lives with the custodial guardian. Their custodial guardian can either be the other parent or the child is sent to foster care. When it comes to the custody of the child, family law is different for every case. Currently, there are no laws stating that requires a non-incarcerated parent to bring the child to visit their parents.
For this segment, we had the lovely opportunity to meet Anya Richardson, a licensed professional counselor in the state of Missouri.
Moreover, the legal guardian has full control over what the child sees from the parent. If the incarcerated parent mails a letter, the letter will be sent to the guardian's house, and the guardian may hide the letter or throw it away entirely. Since a minor cannot drive, it is up to the parent whether the child is allowed to see their incarcerated parent. Sweetie, what are you doing? Come on, let's go.
The mail, but that doesn't mean that the child's going to receive it. The custodial parent could just throw it away.
That's right. And they could call and they could not answer the call, because when you get a call from prison, they have to say it's from prison and you have to accept it. So
Okay.
you can just not accept it. You know, so you're right. People can say, you should do this and here's what I'm ordering you to do. But no judge is following you around to make sure you're doing it.
Right.
I think it's the only way to do it. Do I think it gets abused? Probably. I think it's probably a good thing to do and be able to say, you know, yes, you can have this phone call and it's going to be on speakerphone so that I can hear it. And after a certain amount of times that it goes well, I'll back out a little bit.
Along with the physical barrier, the bars of prison create a mental wall in the parent-child relationship. For starters, the loss of an attachment figure can be difficult for the child to cope. The loss of their parents may not be fully understood by the child, leaving the child hurt and confused. The ongoing contact with law enforcement can also contribute to further confusion and stress.